Hello, everyone. Sargon, Destroyer of Worlds here, and welcome back to another episode of Cities Skylines. We are here in the beautiful city of Bytown, but today is a special episode. This is a beginner's guide to the Bob mod, which is beautify our builds. And the reason why we're doing that is I recently ported my computer. I recently ported over my game to a new computer, and the Bob config file did not follow. Now, I could have searched for it and tried to bring it over to just have everything, the way it was. But I thought this was an excellent opportunity to create this guide, as well as perhaps change up some of the things I had done in the past. Bob is a very beautiful mod, no pun intended. So if we come into here, we'll see kind of some of the things that we can do with it. And in fact, we're going to zip around and look over in this direction over our beautiful new boulder park that we built last episode. If you haven't seen it, link here, and as well it'll be in the description. But the beauty of Bob is it allows us to change most props and trees within the map and within the assets. Now, there are some limitations. You can't change all the props, but you can change most, to my knowledge, at least the ones you are probably most interested in having changed out. So there are three main use cases for Bob from a very simplistic point of view. The first one is replacing or moving tree and props on the map itself. You can also replace or remove trees and props within a particular building asset. And you can also change the probability of a prop or tree appearing within an asset. There are three main use cases, one using Bob. The first is replacing trees or props that are on the map. Those include those that come with the base map, as well as any that you add throughout your gameplay. The second use case is replacing or removing trees and props that are on a building asset. And the last one is changing the probability of a tree or prop appearing within a building asset. So let's dive into the very first use case, which is replacing trees and props on the building map. So it's quite simple. If you come up to Bob, you'll see a little Bob here, and you can click anywhere on the map, and you'll see a list of all the trees and all the props that are being used. Now, what you're seeing here is the entire list of props that can be changed, not just from the base map, but as well things I have placed throughout the game. So you can see a list of props, list of various trees, including the new ones that came with the update to the game when the Airports DLC was released. But this is a bit overwhelming. The list is much shorter for what's in the base map when you would start it up. So let's go have a look at that right now. This is the original Swamplands map. There's nothing installed here. I do have all my same mods. But if we come into Bob here and we just click on the map, you'll see how much fewer assets are on here. So we have all these tree types versus the longer list. So you can go in and we can replace any of these and all of these, or none of these. And you can see there are some props. Now, the one thing I wish you could do here is get rid of these fallen trees quite easily, but you'd have to replace it for one prop for another. But other than that, as you can see, much shorter, smaller list that comes in with the original map. So if you want to change it, this is a great time to change it, because then you can see the impact of all your changes without impacting any of the assets that you might have placed throughout the game. So with that, let's jump back in to Bytown. All right, so now that we are back in Bytown, we're going to have a look at our first use case. So we'll dive right into replacing trees and props on the base map itself. So we're just going to click anywhere here on the map, and now you'll see our very long list. And just to make sure you understand some key parts of the options we have here, on the left-hand side, we have the ability to switch from props, switch to trees. So we don't have the ability to see trees and props when we're just looking at the trees and props on the map itself. Long list. We'll skip the extra functions. This is a beginner's guide, so we're going to not go over the extra functions section. We do have a search. Now we have the ability to hide any vanilla, so you can see these trees here with the V, hide vanilla, and all those have gone away. Now that also includes the ones that were released at the same time as Airports DLC that were added into the base game. So, and that will lead us into our search function. So to find those, we can just type MP9 and we will see all those that were released at that time, including probably my favorite, the live oak. Now, the other way you can find trees to replace, or in this as well as props, but this will focus on trees, is you can type in, say, just pine, and you will see all these assets that are listed with pine. You will need to know sometimes if you've downloaded any workshop assets, sometimes the name of the actual assets itself. So one of my favorite is a hardwood, but it is actually labeled as Apollo 2v1 tall. So not something you would necessarily search for, but if you happen to know the name of it, this is another way to come find it. As we look over Boulder Park, we are going to replace 2 trees. So we'll first come into Bob and we'll click on this one here. It is the Beach 01 Low. It is a tree that I am not very fond of. If we come in here, you can kind of get a better look at it. You might like it, but it's one that I do want to replace. Now we'll go in and to the MP9. And because we're on a bit of a boreal theme here, we're actually going to replace this with the boreal pine. And in this section, we have the options of apply and save changes. So there we go. They've all been replaced across the map everywhere. Now, if you want, you can just undo it and come back in and just apply it again. And there we go. So those have been replaced with the boreal pine. Nice looking tree, especially once you get it in the other pine and conifer trees. But let's go on and let's replace the next one. So the next one we're going to replace is this tree here, which is the Pine 01 Low, a tree I do not love at all. I'm surprised it has lasted this long. But we are going to replace this with a workshop tree. So this is where it is helpful to know the tree asset is actually called. So we will search for the aforementioned hardwood tree called Apollo. Click on it, click the green check mark, and boom. Those have been replaced across the map. So I really like how this is starting to shape up, and I will probably come in and replace more of these, but I will do that later. Now, let's look at a few examples of replacing some trees within a building asset. So unlike when we changed the trees and props on the map, we do have a few more options when changing them within a building asset. So let's have a look here. We'll use our dog parks. And you'll see here we have our ability to filter for props, filter for trees, trees and props. So, you know, a little extra functionality, but not too much. But here is some new functionality. We have the ability, and it defaults here in the middle, to change all props or trees of this type across this building. So this would change it on all dog parks. Now the third option here is all props or trees of this type in all buildings. So let's show that here. We'll click on this tree. So you can see the trees are highlighted here across all our dog parks. If I scroll out a bit, you'll see in this park area as well over here, in this park, and you know, with the basketball court, that they're all selected. So we can change all trees of this type across all of our building assets. We don't want to do that yet. We will show that, but we also have the ability to change each individual asset. So let's look at the trees, be a little easier. So as you can see here, tree here, this tree here, you know, this tree here, and that tree there. So, and so on and so forth across all the trees within the asset. So that's an option if you really want to get particular. It's one that I don't really use too often, but it is available. So we do have our ability to search. I haven't got the show random to work, but don't really need it. Now, the other things you need to be familiar with are, of course, the apply and save change button, the revert. This is something we're going to do, which is a little later, and this probability slider. The rest that's more advanced, this is a beginner's guide to Bob. You ignore this, and you ignore this plus and minus sign as well. So let's get into the first one here, and that is our bush. I'm going to come in, click on it, and we are going to use some of the new assets that came with the game when they updated it when they released the Airports DLC. So we'll replace it with the specific Rhododendron, whatever. Can't pronounce that, but it's one of my favorite ones in here. So once again, I just click apply and save change, and that's a changed across all dog parks. Now we're going to come into this tree, and like we did before, we are going to change it to the hardwood that we replaced it as well. So this is a good thing to do as well when you are replacing assets. As you can see here, just click, and all those are now changed, and we have a nice cover over our dog park. So looking pretty good. So you do want to make sure that you are picking trees and trying to get a palette on the go. And this is what we're going with here at this time. Now, I do want to make sure you understand how we can remove that. So if we come in, click the Apollo trees, go, you know what? I actually like the original tree. Just come in here and click the undo selected replacement, and then apply and save changes. And we get out of Bob, and you can see we reverted back to the original trees. So I do want to put the Apollos in there. So we'll come back and we will put those in. Once again, click on the tree, and we'll come to our Apollo, and we'll add that one back in. Boom, we have that there. Now you'll notice that this change was made across all dog parks, but this park wasn't updated. Although we could have, but we decided not to, at least with this particular update. Now for the second building asset, we're going to change the trees on these residential buildings. Now these are some of the assets that you might not plop and you can use just with zoning, unlike the dog parks. So that's the reason why I want to show this one. So come into Bob, and we got this huge tree, which is fairly ugly. It's this guy right here. And this green tree, which is, it's okay. But we're going to replace both of these. Now, we're going to take the opportunity to use this functionality, all trees of this type in all buildings. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to start with the U, and we're going to put in my current favorite tree, which is the live oak. So we come in, and you'll see a massive difference in the quality of the trees in this area now, just by that one simple change. You know, a nice simple change here too while we're here. Why is that tree there? Let's get rid of that tree. So that is a change, and once again, we can do the similar thing. We'll come in this green tree 01. We'll make sure we're on all assets, and we're going to replace that once again with one of the trees that we did recently get in the release with this generic pine tree. And we're just going to click apply and save changes. As you can see, this has really changed how things look in this neighborhood. I will come back later and replace some of these other trees that come with these assets to really make this look a lot better. But let's move on to the next example. We are over here at our trade school gymnasium, and you'll notice that we have parking lot roads. So this is how we designed this when we placed this during our initial campus build. However, with the Bob reset, you'll notice the asset has its parking spaces back for those that have been following along with this series. So we want to get rid of those again. So we're going to come into Bob, click on the asset, and we're going to go over to props. And you'll notice parking spaces 02. So let me just move the box. And you'll notice in this case, these are all the parking stalls across the building. So we want to get rid of those. So the easy way to do that is just hit hide this item, sets probability to 0, and you'll notice this probability slider will go all the way to 0. So you could just, slide the slider here, but clicking this button and then apply and save changes is the quickest and fastest way of doing that. So in both cases, you will need to hit the green check mark, apply and save changes. I will note that some assets will have multiple parking spaces, so you might see parking spaces 01 and 02, and sometimes there's invisible parking spots. But you want to make sure you are doing this as we did, all props of this type, because there might be some assets that you do want to leave parking as part of the asset. So if you were to accidentally use this one, you would have removed parking across all assets, at least those that use parking spaces 02. For the last one, I will show you how you can use the probability to change the look of the assets. I've placed down 5 of the same asset where it does randomly change some props, most notably the top rotating 3D billboard. As we just did, we could remove it by reducing the probability to 0. So if we click on the rotating ice cream, we come in and we can just, well, let's move this out of the way. We can just remove it to 0. But as you notice, that gets rid of all of them. Now, what we can do instead is we can slowly reduce the probability. As you can see, at 87%, it actually removed the middle clown, not the ice cream cone that we were on. So we can keep going down, and we can wait until it disappears. You can see here at 52%, it has gone away. So we can say yes to that. But now let's say I wanted to come in and place down more of these assets. Now these happen to be a vanilla asset, and I'll just use the Picket mod and plop Puerto Rico. You'll notice that there's only a 50% chance of a rotating billboard to actually appear. So that is something you have to be mindful of. So we can come back into Bob and we will increase this back to 88%. Or I believe it was 87. And now what we could do instead, so let's say we did want to get rid of all the scary clowns, but perhaps just have this one chipmunk here. You could come in and use Move It. It's another alternative. And we can just, let's find it here, reset the object. That's disappeared. We come in here, reset this object. So it's still an 80% chance that one will show up, but now we just have the one with the rotating chipmunk. So that is something you can do with the probability and Bob, along with the mod Move It. So there's options there, but it's just for your consideration as to what you can do with probability. Lastly, I'm going to show you why you just might want to remove a proper tree instead of using the probability to reduce its probability of showing up. For the basketball court, I had originally moved the trees by reducing their probability to 0, and then I did my own detailing. You'll see the reason why I did this is because some of the trees are on the actual road after I placed this using Move It. Now, I could have gone into each individual tree selection and reduce their probability to 0. So I'll come into Bob, and you notice that it is tree 2. So we'll zoom in on the basketball court and not the park that's next to it. Come in individual trees. We could find the trees that are on the road, including this one, and I could reduce its probability to 0. Once again, come around, find, oops, see, I forgot to hit apply and save changes. So this change has now been applied to all basketball courts across the city, and this tree has been removed. And now I can come in and I can remove this tree and remove it. Now, if I'm only ever going to have one of these assets, this might work. However, I have multiple basketball courts. So we're going to revert this, and we're going to come into all buildings of this type. Click on the tree 2, and we're just going to remove all those there. And click apply and save changes. And now I will just do my own detailing like I did with this basketball court. So I think this is probably the way to go for an asset like this. But the choice is yours. I do hope that this beginner's guide into using the Bob mod has been useful. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to follow along with my other Cities Skylines content, or at least consider giving this video a thumbs up and leaving a comment below. But I'd like to thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.